Hello, everybody. This is Thomas Starker, CEO of Community Heroes, and I'd like to welcome you all to another interview that we have today. We have a special young lady with an interesting story, so I hope you enjoy it. And I'm just going to kind of uh, jump into it. So today we're going to be talking to Miss Dayniah Manderson. Dayniah, how you doing today?
I'm great. I was great until you messed up my name, but that's okay. Everybody else does, so I'm not even upset about it. It's Dayniah, and I'm doing great. Dayniah Manderson.
See, I knew it was gonna happen, but they say it won't be right unless something gets missed.
Listen, it's what it is. I mean, at least you're not the first, the last. You're not even the 20th, so it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of jump into our questions.
And thanks for having me, by the way. I didn't say that, but absolutely, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me on as a guest.
Well, thank you, and just for those who are curious, how I actually got to know Miss Madison. I was browsing online, and I'm always looking for the next, interesting story. And I'm browsing, I'm looking Twitter and searching Google and all these things, and uh, I ran across a story, and I just want to talk about it. And I saw it, and I got to looking at videos, and I got to reading, and and I'm like, wow, I saw a lot of myself in you. So I said, man, I said, I got to get her on. And we've been playing phone tag for a while. So this is a process in the making here, folks. So anyway, without any further ado, I'm going to jump into the questions. So the first one that I want to ask is, can you tell us a little bit about your hometown?
Okay, so when we talk about my hometown, I actually grew up on the island of Jamaica. I moved here to the States when I was 14 years old. If anyone ever been to Jamaica, they know it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet, hands down. But in terms of life for a person with disabilities, it's not a very accessible place to be. For example, there's no public transportation that has ramps. Um, there are no ramps anywhere, right? Like for me to just hop onto a sidewalk or access a building. A lot of buildings still have steps. So as beautiful as my island is, I will say that it is not the most disability friendly place in the world. But after I migrated from Jamaica at the age of 14, I started living in the Bronx, which is in the state of New York. For those of you who don't know, big ups to the Boogie Down Bronx. And needless to say, I love the Bronx, right? It's just I'm in a nice little quiet area over here. But as a teenager growing up, it felt a lot. It was like being in a nice big ocean as opposed to being in a small pond. So yeah, that's kind of what my two hometowns are like. If you had to compare them, one offers me a lot more sunshine and I think a lot more enjoyment, and one just offers me a better place to live in terms of fulfilling, my higher purpose and having access to stuff.
Yeah. And just to chime in on something that you had mentioned, when you get a chance to go to other areas outside of the states, I had the opportunity whenever my wife and I had.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing an official interview. Please just keep your voices down. Yes. Could you just say that again? Go ahead.
Yes. So I was saying, my wife and I, when we first got married, we went on a cruise as part of like his honeymoon anniversary. Well, no, it was in the first year, so it was the first year anniversary, and we went to the Bahamas, did the cruise, and you know how you get off. And I never forget when we got off for one of the stops, and I want to say I think we started at Freeport, and I was getting on the cab, which was really just a old van, old van that I got in there, and there was like no air conditioning in it, and they had like this wood ramp thing that they had to put me in there because, like you said, the accessibility is, I mean, it's almost none. I mean, it's no accessibility. But
I
I was
think the
able to,
definitions are just different. What they call accessible in the islands is very, very different than what
yeah.
we see here. Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, I never forgot, I was riding in there. There was no strap down. There was no nothing. I was just there. And then it was like $20. I was like, man, I could never survive with here $20 a ride. Uh, but when you said that, I remember the accessibility issue. And so that brought back deja vu. So my next question I'd like to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about your family? I think we heard a little bit of the family just a second ago.
Um, family. Well, I have a very supportive family structure, but as it goes in terms of immediate family, it really is just my daughter and I. I'm a mom to a teenager, so we all know what that can be like. But it has been one of the most rewarding things that I have done, believe it or not. Um, I think you're no stranger to being a parent with a disability, so it has its challenges, right? In terms of just even the way in which society views you as being capable of raising a child, right? It's always this question around, are you able to, what are you capable of, are you able to give a child a full rich life, and I think that is one of the things that I have tried to dispel, those notions that a person with a disability cannot raise a child that is fully capable, functional, and successful. So I have kind of devoted my life to that because I've always been challenged with that when she was younger. So I just I think it's been a very rewarding experience, and anything that pushes back on society's notions of people with disability kind of gets me off. So in ter- in terms of that, yeah, it's that's my family life in a nutshell. But I do, my mom is very, very active in my life. We don't live together, but I see her quite often. It's almost as if we live together. And I have my other relatives who are active in my life, but it's kind of just like my mom and my kid, who I would say the three musketeers. We're the three musketeers together. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of chime in on what you just said, and also the reason why I even asked about a family because again, I feel like it's very important that in the times that we're in right now and the way perceptions are, I think it's very important that individuals that have quote unquote severe disabilities show our society that, hey, I may have this significant limitation, but let me show you what I can do. So, like you say, it's good to see individuals like yourself, myself, show that, okay, I have this barrier, but I'm just as good as a parent as you are, or maybe even better, and because I know what I have a son, for those who don't know, and a lot of the question that were asked was like, how would you teach him how to use the bathroom? How when he needs to go to the restroom, how are you going to help him, or how are you going to be able to play these games with him? And all of that stuff, he learned all of them. I taught all of them to him. And it's just good to dispel these myths that I don't know how they come about, but they some kind of form, some kind of way in our mindsets. So that's one of the main reasons why I was wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk about being a mother.
But
Uh,
not only that, like we literally have in society able-bodied parents who don't do anything for their children, right? Like we have other fathers who are able-bodied who are not there to teach their children, their sons how to use the bathroom, right? And teach them how to, or to play a game with them in the park. So when you set that as a standard of being a good parent, then if that's the case, there are many able-bodied men who are just, you know what I'm saying? Like that cannot be the
yeah,
thing that you're going to use to say, are you going to be a good parent because you can teach your child to use the bathroom, right? Like parenting is so much more than the physical stuff, right?
yeah,
It's about creating a nurturing environment. It's about like empowering your child to be successful. So when it comes to the physical stuff, I'm just like, whatever.
yeah. And so my next question is, Can you tell us about your diagnosis?
I have muscular dystrophy. The specific form of muscular dystrophy that I have is spinal muscular atrophy type 2. Um, and what that simply means is I have a genetic disorder. So I did not acquire my disability. I was born with my disability. I have never walked. I'm 100%. Oh, no, I shouldn't say 100%, but I am dependent on a home attendant for daily living skills, such as getting dressed or using the bathroom, preparing meals. And apart from the fact that there are societal barriers, like, or infrastructural barriers, I really live a very full life, regardless of the fact that I'm confined to a wheelchair. It doesn't, shouldn't even use the word confined because I do get out of my chair, right? But I'm reliant on a mobility device. But in terms of my disability and how much it limits me, it's usually mostly infrastructural.
Yeah. So, um, my next question uh, is
And if
can
you need me
you
to expound on any answers, just tell me. We're always often being told to keep our answers succinct. So I'm trying not to like over elaborate on anything. But if you'd like me to, you can always say add a little bit more to that or whatever. Okay. I don't want you to think I'm rushing through your interview.
yeah. Okay, and okay, thank you. I definitely so I guess I didn't put this question in there, but if you want to, you could maybe elaborate on the symptoms of your particular muscular dystrophy. Because I have myosin deficient myself, and all of them are kind of similar, but I didn't know if you wanted to uh, give like a brief explanation of some of the symptoms there.
So the hard part is the last time that I actually visited a geneticist, he wasn't very convinced that I actually had SMA type 2, right? Because in terms of what he anticipated as limitations, he didn't see those things. So I'm not going to say the things that I'm describing are indicative of people with SMA2 because I still have to go back to get like actually genetic tested because they're not so sure that I actually have what they say I have. But what I do see as manifestations is just like muscle weakness, right? So like I can't weight bear on my legs. Um, in terms of my arm strength and dexterity, that's limited. The functionality is very limited. But I breathe fine. I have not needed a respirator. Thank God for that. I'm still able. I'm not incontinent. Thank God for that. Um, all of these things that I was kind of told was to look forward to, like not being able to swallow, not being able to close my eyes, or not being able to speak clearly. All of those things I have not had to deal with. I've actually, like I've said before, apart from the fact that I'm dependent on a mobility device and people for personal care, um, that's pretty much the extent to which my disability affects me. So I'm just very grateful to God for that.
And I feel I don't want to add too much still to the your interview, but it just like I said, we have so much in common, and you had mentioned some about a geneticist because as a lot of us who probably have muscular dystrophy probably have had contact with some kind of geneticist at some point in our lives. With me, what was very interesting was coming up. My parents they were limited on mobility, so I didn't get a chance to really have a geneticist like that. We had to go to the local health department when they came down from the Forest Raleigh, which was like the bigger city, to our little town, and I would meet them that way most of the time. But the point of me bringing that up is I truly didn't know what my specific muscular dystrophy was for years. They just always said muscular dystrophy until I got married and I went into a UNC genetic test group, and it was over a span of a couple of months. They did the blood test and ran all the stuff to figure out what I had, and finally they said it was myosin deficient. But as you just mentioned, you hear these things, and it's very scary because they tell there's a mobility rate a lot of times that you shouldn't live at a certain time, and there's these things to where like you just say you may not swallow, or you may go passing yourself. I mean, it's very scary. And luckily, thank God, like yourself, that a lot of those things have not come to fruition. Uh, but it is very, very scary. I just want to bring about the genetic testing part. Um, that's very interesting. A lot of times to wait and wait and wait to figure out what what exactly is going on with you. Can you put a name to what you feel?
So if I could just chime in, kind of piggyback off of that, right? When I was diagnosed in Jamaica, my mom wasn't told that there were 40 different types of muscular dystrophy with subtypes, right? She was literally just told she had muscular dystrophy, she's going to need a wheelchair, and they gave her a wheelchair. Even though at the time when she got me diagnosed, I was literally holding on and walking around, right? Like they gave her a wheelchair. She took the doctor's advice. She put me in a wheelchair, and the muscles started to atrophy, right? So we can see here where even those expectations of medical professionals can stunt, right, progress of a child who has a disability, because if the parents are just being told like this is what you're going to need without saying you do it gradually as the need arises, right, you can actually do a lot of damage to your child, right? And secondly, when I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, my what do you call it, my obstetrician wanted me to do an amniocentesis to detect if my daughter had muscular dystrophy or not. And after thinking about it in my brain, I'm like, okay, but even if they determine that she has, like she carries the gene or she's likely to have manifestations of it, it's not like I'm gonna abort her anyway, right? Like I wouldn't abort myself. So it doesn't, because I said to them, like, are you able to even tell me the specific type that she would have if that were the case? And it was like, no, but we would know if she has something. And I'm like, but what difference would it make? I wouldn't abort her anyway. So I just think when it comes to medical professionals and what their outlook is on how things are going to be, we have to be a little bit cautious, right? Because they can't determine the outcome. They're really just using us as the form of their research, right? So unless everyone comes forward and say this is what you see, like they're only kind of just going by a limited sample, right? So
Yeah,
I always feel like a guinea pig when I go to the hospital. They ask me more questions and they give me answers.
yeah,
Even when I was carrying my daughter, my obstetrician didn't, she'd never treated someone with my condition before. So it was almost like, hey, we're just finding this out together. She was like, you might need bed rest. Guess what? I worked up until my 9th month, 2 weeks before I gave birth. Like I went to work every day. But in her mind, she assumed I would have needed bed rest, right? That's not something she can know about me. It's all about what I know about me and how far I can push myself. So I just say that to say when the doctors tell you stuff, trust yourself first. And then, I mean, of course you have to trust them, right? But I think your audience will get the point that I'm making. I don't want to tell anyone to discredit. I don't want to discredit medicine or science, but I don't want you to discredit yourself and not trust yourself either.
yeah. I definitely agree, and I'm gonna just say because I'm thinking that if a doctor tells me that I'm the first case they ever seen like that, I'm gonna be like, okay, I know you're a professional, but you know about just as much as I know at this point.
At that point, they should be paying you for information. You've taken them back to school.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go to the next question. I think my next question, I might have asked it already, but I wanted to know a little bit about your educational background.
So I'm a product of the public school system. I went to public school in New York. And after leaving high school, I did earn a scholarship to college from the New York Times, and I decided to go to good old NYU, my alma mater. I love it. So I earned my bachelor's from NYU in English education for secondary grades, which means I'm a certified English teacher for grades 7 through 12. And several years after that, I actually did go back to NYU because I love it so much to get my master's, and I have my master's in school building leadership. And what that basically means is I'm certified to be a school principal. So yeah, I have not yet gone back for a PhD, but I feel like I'm going to go back to NYU. And I say that because I'm going to be very upfront with you, not to throw shade on any school, but I've taken like courses at Columbia University, for example, and it's just not a very accessible campus, right? But when we talk about accessibility, and yes, NYU, you should pay me for this. It was a very, very accessible school. I was able to live on campus for 4 years of my undergraduate education. And we're talking about automatic doors. We're talking about being allowed to have a room on my own and wide hallways and wide doorways and a bathroom that is totally renovated for me. And I don't think it's just me, right? Because I had quite a bit of peers at NYU who also were disabled and were able to take advantage of the facilities. Does that mean that it's perfect? No. But even for me going there from 1999 to 2003, it was very revolutionary to have a campus that was that wheelchair accessible. So yeah,
Yeah,
I just had to brag about that a little bit.
yeah. I mean, that's awesome. That's another thing I would like to advocate on. Just buildings, businesses in general that and the vision to understand that being all inclusive is very important because whenever like you said, whenever you got that one step drop, or either that door that won't open up by itself. From a business standpoint, you're telling me you don't want my business and you don't want my money. I'm just
That's
gonna be
exactly what I'm
transparent. You don't
saying.
want my money.
You're right. I agree. And I honestly, I don't patronize businesses that don't have a ramp. Even if I'm with my kid and I could just easily say to her, run right in there and grab me a soda. Or, like it's not going to happen because if you're not going to make sure your infrastructure is accommodating for me, then my money is absolutely not going to build your bank account. It's a principal thing.
Yeah, and
and
that's
and that's why I will continue to go back to NYU because I feel as if they have not only given me a quality education, but they have created a campus that allows me to actually do what I want to do and still be successful and not feel like I'm having to like go through hoops and be dependent on other people more than I need to.
yeah, kudos to them. So the next question I like to ask is, how did you win the title Miss Wheelchair New York?
All about my beauty. No, I'm joking. No, I was a friend of mine on Facebook, and we've never met. And I won't say her name here just because I didn't ask her beforehand if I could talk about her name. But she nominated me for the Miss Virtual New York pageant competition. I was a little reluctant at first because I'm not the beauty queen type. You can tell I'm very like in the gutter doing teaching and stuff, right? I never considered myself a standard beauty queen. But I went for it because it was an experience that I feel as if someone nominates you for something like that, you should honor them because they have seen something in you that you might not have seen in yourself, right? And I took that as a very big vote of confidence. So I went along with it and I won. But I also know that maybe it's because I'm very thoughtful in the things that I'm doing. So maybe when I answered my questions, they appreciated the responses. And I did that. I did that for the year. Um, Very interesting experience, I must say. I didn't go on to do the national competitions. I kind of pulled myself out of out of the competitive arena when it came to that. There were just a lot of things going on, even in my personal life. But I must say that it's very rewarding in the sense that I got introduced to. So let me back up a little bit. I have, because I grew up in the islands, and then even when I was growing up in the Bronx, I wasn't always around a lot of people with disabilities, right? It was kind of like I was the person with the disability, like the token disabled person, right? But I didn't have many friendships. I had Facebook friends. So for me, I needed this competition, or winning the competition kind of propelled me into the world of disability rights and activism, and to realize that the things that I was experiencing, they were universal, right? Like it wasn't just me who was dealing with it. I wasn't the problem here. Society is the problem. And I have proof. There are all these other people who are going through the same thing. And to actually like meet so many people who were progressive, and doing great things, I was just like, this is a community that I really need to explore a little bit further, right? I think the competition just opened me up to a different level of awareness that I had no clue about. So in terms of my own personal growth, and even the fact that I was able to get comfortable in my own skin, to realize that the solution was not to pray to be a walker, or, an able-bodied person, that I could live a full life from my wheelchair, was just empowering. So you'll never hear me say anything bad. I won't say never, but you won't hear me really speak negatively on the competition, because the personal growth aspect for me, I could never trade that for anything.
Yeah, that right there, that whole little thing you just mentioned, I think everyone should look at just life in general from that perspective. Like you just said, having that positive mindset and being the advocate, for not only themselves but for others. So my next question I want to ask you is, can you tell us about a life of determination, independence?
Okay, so that is the New York Times article. That quickly, I forgot. We went over these questions, and I forgot that quickly. That article. Well, before the article was written, I was actually about to get a spine surgery. I had a spine curvature, actually, that had started when I was around 10, and it wasn't corrected. It wasn't corrected as it was happening. And then when I migrated to this country, doctors were really afraid of doing surgery on my spine. They were concerned. But I was able to get this surgery in 2008. Really, really wonderful doctor, Dr. Boachi, miracle hands. I'll always speak up, pray God keeps him forever. But he did an extremely wonderful job on straightening my spine. And shortly thereafter, I was, the New York Times. I'm not sure if someone presented them with the story or gave them information about me, but they did the story. And they focused a lot on my teaching, right? My teaching skills, or my career rather. And I don't know really where you would like me to go with the question, but it's it was a very, I keep using the word rewarding. I need to find another word. But I think just being able to have my story out there, and the feedback that I've gotten from people in terms of saying that the story has inspired them, or the story has given them a fresh perspective. Um, Even for people with disability, they felt as if this story has allowed them to see themselves as being more capable. I think just that I'm getting goosebumps right now as I'm talking about it. But even as it were when the story was coming out and I saw it, I was just like, this is crazy. Like, no one wants to read this. Who cares about this little teacher in the Bronx, right? But to see I mean, you're here talking to me, and this has been since 2010, right? We're talking about 11 years later, and the story is still out there and is still touching hearts and minds. And for that, I'm grateful, because whatever I can do to add to the dialogue of people with disabilities, and the strength that we have, and our agency, right? Like what we do to add to society in a positive way. I will do it a million times over. I I'm going to use the word rewarding. It was a rewarding experience.
Yeah. And, and I just wanted to, just mention, like you just said, part of the feedback that you gotten, like you said, it was probably very much surprising and beyond your part of your imagination. But for me, like I said, personally, I just saw so much in that. When I saw it, I saw this is another young minority who's a parent who has, not the same subtype, but the same disability, and face some of the same barriers trying to work, working in education and dealing with public transportation, and just trying to be independent as possible. There's so many dynamics to this story that I saw in myself, being a parent, the toe to toe thing of that. And also in the midst of doing all that, not complaining, you know, you know, you still getting up every day, doing what you're supposed to do because that's what adults do, you know. Um, so I don't want to keep on about the story because whoever's watching right now, Google a life of determination independence. There's a YouTube video. There's an article. I think you should read about it. Whoever's looking right now, I mean, it gives you a fresh perspective of what an overachiever is. So so that's what I got from it myself.
You got jokes.
Now, no, I was it was if we're gonna use the word overachiever, I would say that's what I mean, I was throwing myself in there too overachiever, but I mean, I think you really, you know, I think you need to put yourself in a model position where people can
Oh, thank
strive.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. So my seventh question is what has been your biggest obstacle since you started teaching, and what did you learn from it?
So when it comes to obstacles, there oh sorry, let me just make sure my battery. Sorry, it's still made my battery's running. Don't worry about it. Um sorry, I teach from my phone, so it's on my I never have batteries anymore. But in terms of the obstacles, I would say that infrastructural has been the biggest barrier, I would say, in terms of the teaching aspect. Um, I'm just going to briefly mention that I currently have a federal lawsuit against the Department of Education for structural barriers, meaning the bathrooms. I've never worked at a school that had a bathroom that accommodated me. I currently work in a school where, I mean, not physically right now because I'm teaching remotely, but we have a fire room that is never really functional, right? It has combustible materials in there. There's no way to exit. There's no safe path to exit. So the fire room is actually a death trap, in my opinion. Um, so those things, right? And I still can't work at any school that I want to because not all schools have an elevator, not all schools have ramps, right? So that's been kind of hard because even though I love my school where I'm working right now, it would be nice to have options, right? Everyone would like to have options. But I think an even bigger barrier to that is the perception of some of the people in administration. No, I'm not saying specifically my administrators or any particular administrators. I'm just saying because if they are not, if they don't believe that you can do a good job, they'll never really give you a fair shot. So, and I say this because I was recently published in USA Today because I wrote an article about my journey of trying to get a leadership position, right? So I think I mentioned that my master's is in school building leadership, but yet no matter how much I have gone on these interviews and I'll be getting great feedback until it's the face-to-face interview, right? So you'll go through round one and you go through round two and everyone is excited and everything sounds great. And then round three, where you actually have that personal interview, you can kind of see where the excitement is starting to wane a little bit. Okay. And for me, I feel as if that's one of the obstacles that you can't really, it's hard to substantiate, right? How can you comment on someone's inherent bias? Or like, I can't say, oh, I didn't get the job because I'm disabled, right? No one's going to put that on paper, right? But what it does cause, it can be very demotivating to be working for an organization where you're not being taken seriously on your own merit. You're being shunned or pushed to the side based on other people's ideas of who you are or what you're capable of doing. And for me, that's one of the things that I'm trying to tackle little by little.
Yeah, I can really, I definitely can relate to that. So I, I since I know we have viewers that know, I just won't touch too much on that. But I will say this though, you make a tremendous point about sometimes, you have, and for me in the educational background, I've seen it there where whenever you try to be in a position of power, people will question your ability to take an authoritative position based on, like you just said, what they see, their perception. Uh, like your physical limitations will dictate your presence when it
Or your
comes.
cognitive abilities, right? Like,
Yeah,
and mind you, I run a very tight ship. My classroom is always orderly. Kids adore me as much as I adore them, right? Like, I have great results, and yet I don't know what the question is, but yet here we are. So maybe I'll just start my own school because I also can do that
yeah. Well, if you do,
eventually.
I would love to be a stakeholder and to,
Well, you pray on it and I'll pray along with you and then we'll get it going.
yeah,
I have about 6 more years left within the Department of Education. And if I stay that long, right after that, I'm going to start working on my own thing because I'm an educator at heart. So
yeah, that'd be
that'll be
awesome.
where it goes.
So we're about to wrap up the questions. Next question is for everyone who's still with us and enjoyed this interview, where can they connect with you online?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, by email. You could literally, if you Google me, you'll find me, right? And I think Mr. Starkey is going to put my name in the chat or somewhere. And it's my social media is my name. I don't have any funny hashtags or any weird numbers or underscores or symbols, right? It's just Dayniah Manderson. Facebook, it's Dayniah and then space Manderson. Instagram, I think they left off the last N on Manderson, but whatever. But the point is, you can find me by my name, and you can always reach me on DayniahManderson.com, which is my website. So
Okay.
yeah, you can find me. You can find me. I'm easy to reach.
Yeah. And we'll maybe just mention in the video description on YouTube. I'll put those handles
Thank
under
you so
the.
much. Appreciate it.
And my last question is, um, what has been your proudest moment as an educator and business owner?
My proudest moment as an educator is knowing that at the end of the school year, my students all have a different idea of what it means for a person to have a disability, right? I think a lot of times they probably came in thinking, oh, don't stare or don't ask questions. Even now, they're a little timid in asking questions. And I think when they leave me with such compassionate people who are basically no longer ableist, because they love me so much that they would never offend a person with a disability, I feel, just because they think it would maybe offend me. But I mean, the truth is they leave my classroom being empathetic and being smarter about the abilities of people with disabilities. They always comment, "Oh my goodness, I never thought that a person could do that with a disability." Like I show them videos of me taking driving lessons, and they have a whole. It's like, whoa, like they make vans like this, and you're gonna drive. And when we can allow, or when I can allow them to see that I live a very normal life, I have a kid, and they're always like, "You had her naturally, or is she adopted?" And when I just answer these questions and dispel those myths, right, those preconceived notions that they have, it's how could I not be pleased with myself, right? Like I'm creating, I'm molding little people who are going to grow up to be adults who are not going to just assume because you're disabled, they know what you're capable of doing. Because I tell them that all the time. You see me, but you don't know until you ask.
That's
And I
right.
make sure that they're comfortable asking. So they'll be, "Miss, I want to ask a question, but I don't want to be offensive." And I'm like, "You'll offend me if you don't ask the question, actually. Ask me the question, and I'll tell you if it's, because it might be a question that is not appropriate for school, like how do you have sex, right? A kid asks me that question, I'm not going to answer, but I want them to answer. I mean, I want them to ask the question so that I can frame the proper response for them because I want you to leave here smarter, not just academically, but you have to be politically smarter. You have to be socially smarter because we have to live in a global society. And if I can do that every day of my life, then I'm fine.
And if I, I'm so happy that you are instilling that into them to not have the fear to now ask because it's almost an oxymoron of what we're teaching our youth. We teach our kids in order to educate themselves, ask questions in school, ask questions so the lack of knowledge is because you don't ask. But whenever we see something that, may be different, like disability or something like that, you know, parents are so quick to tell the child, come on, stop. Don't ask that question. And like you just said, most individuals who have a disability are actually like you said, wanting to explain, and they're not going to jump on you like some monster.
Oh, there
Especially,
are some that do, though. There are some people who I will say I have seen it with my own eyes. People with disabilities who aren't as understanding of the fact that people are literally just seeking knowledge, right? But because they might be a little insecure with themselves, or they might just be having a bad day, or whatever the myriad of reasons are, I think sometimes people have gotten those kind of responses, and that's why they don't want to answer because sometimes people with disabilities can be very abrasive in how they respond to questions. They can see it as an offense to them. And I want to just encourage people to be gentle when you're explaining things to people because you don't want to alienate our able-bodied counterparts either, right? Like we have to live alongside everyone. But if you're going to be brash and abrasive when dealing with them, they're not going to want to talk to you and they're not going to tell their kids to talk to you. So, we have to be committed to informing and helping people to get smarter about our struggle because we need allies as well.
yeah. And I would at this point then I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Also, to the individual seeking knowledge, asking the question, uh, it would help you out to jump into your question easily. So it would be nice if we could know your name first before you ask the question. I think that could really make a total difference sometimes. If you walk up and say, "Hey, how you doing? My name is John or Tyrone.
Absolutely.
Nice day we're having today." And then and you're sitting there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You don't mind me asking, what is your limitation? Don't say what's wrong with you. But ask what is your limit.
Thank you very much because I'm nothing wrong with me. What's wrong with you?
So, but that's my spirit. Maybe I can do another video, how to ask a question properly. That'll be the next video we'll do. But anyway, I enjoyed this interview. Thank you so much for taking the
Thank you
time
for
out to
having
interview
me.
with us. Hope everyone listened and enjoyed the interview. And we will see everyone soon on the next interview. Thank you, Ms. Madison.
Bye, guys.